In September 1976, a car bomb detonated on Embassy Row in the heart of Washington, D.C., killing former Chilean diplomat Orlando Letelier. This wasn't just a local political hit, it was an execution carried out thousands of miles from home by a clandestine alliance of 6 South American dictatorships. It proved that no distance and no sovereign border could protect you. This was the lethal reach of Operation Condor, a coordinated multinational architecture of state terror that transformed an entire continent into a unified hunting ground for political dissidents.
What if your own government could reach across an ocean to silence you? Before the Washington bombing, the mechanics of this borderless killing zone were refined in the shadows of the Southern Cone. We are deconstructing the terrifying technical infrastructure, from encrypted telex networks to shared surveillance databases that allowed secret police to hunt, kidnap, and disappear victims across thousands of miles. This is the story of how systematic state terror replaced the rule of law with the cold, structural mechanics of transnational repression.
What if an entire continent's borders vanished, not for trade or for travel, but for state-sponsored assassination? Decades ago, 6 South American military dictatorships quietly linked their intelligence agencies to create a borderless killing zone. This wasn't just a series of isolated coups or localized crackdowns. It was a sophisticated, multinational architecture of terror known as Operation Condor. We are deconstructing the terrifying technical infrastructure that allowed secret police to hunt dissidents across thousands of miles. To understand the scale of Operation Condor, we have to look at the geopolitical climate of the mid-1970s. South America was a primary chessboard of the Cold War. In Washington, the domino theory sparked deep-seated fears that if one nation fell to communism, the rest would follow. This led to the National Security Doctrine, adopted by Latin American militaries, which shifted their focus from defending borders to hunting what they called internal enemies. Under this doctrine, students, union leaders, journalists, and even priests were no longer treated as citizens with rights. Instead, they were viewed as biological pathogens within the body politic that needed to be surgically removed. The military juntas believed they were fighting a Third World War, one without traditional front lines. This ideological framework provided the moral justification for a network that would eventually ignore all international laws and sovereign boundaries. The formal birth of this network occurred in November 1975. Manuel Contreras, the head of Chile's notorious secret police, the DINA, invited intelligence chiefs from Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia to a secret summit in Santiago. Brazil joined shortly after. This wasn't just a vague diplomatic meeting. It was a highly technical convention designed to professionalize repression across the entire southern cone of South America. The attendees signed a founding charter that established 3 distinct phases of cooperation. Phase 1 was the mutual exchange of intelligence. Phase 2 was the coordination of field operations to arrest and disappear targets. And Phase 3, the most lethal, involved special operations to assassinate enemies in third-party countries. This document turned individual state security forces into a unified, transnational machine with a single, dark objective. The genius and the horror of Condor lay in its structural mechanics. It dismantled the ancient concept of political asylum. Historically, if you were a dissident in Chile, you fled to Argentina. If you were a leftist in Uruguay, you crossed into Brazil. Operation Condor turned these traditional sanctuaries into death traps, ensuring that a person's political sins followed them no matter where they attempted to hide. Intelligence officers were granted permanent liaison status in neighboring capitals, allowing them to operate on foreign soil with total impunity. They could conduct interrogations, carry out kidnappings, and transport prisoners across borders in unmarked planes without ever filing a single legal document or extradition request. The borders remained for the citizens, but for the secret police, the continent had become one giant, seamless jurisdiction. Let's look at the Condor system, the technical backbone of this shadow network. At a time when international communication was slow and expensive, the Condor nations established a dedicated telex network. This was the 1970s version of a secure, high-speed data link. It allowed an agent in Buenos Aires to send a request for capture to Santiago in a matter of minutes, bypassing all civilian channels. Based at the U.S. military's School of the Americas in the Panama Canal Zone and utilizing encrypted radio frequencies, Condortel was the glue that held the operation together. This shared surveillance database was a precursor to modern digital tracking. It ensured that no name or face was ever truly lost to the system. Once a target was entered into the Condor database, their movements were monitored by 6 different national agencies simultaneously. The coordination extended to the Archives of Repression. Each member nation contributed to a centralized filing system located in a secret office in Buenos Aires, codenamed Teseo. Here, they cataloged the movements, associates, and even the reading habits of thousands of individuals. By pooling their resources, these regimes created a holistic view of the South American left that no single country could have achieved on its own. The military leaders realized that democratic movements were international, so they decided their repression had to be international as well. This wasn't just thuggery. It was an early form of big data warfare used to map social networks and dismantle them piece by piece. They used basic computers and punch cards to track the connections between exiled politicians and underground resistance movements, creating a digital web of death. Phase 3 of the operation is what finally drew the world's attention to the darkness of the Southern Cone. These elimination teams were composed of specialized commandos who operated far outside the continent. In 1976, former Chilean ambassador Orlando Leroyer was killed by a car bomb in the heart of Washington, D.C. It remains one of the most infamous acts of foreign state-sponsored terrorism ever committed on U.S. soil. The Letelier assassination proved that the Condor reached into the very heart of the Western world. Similar hits were attempted in Rome, Lisbon, and Madrid. The message from the Condor regimes was absolute. There is no corner of the globe far enough and no city influential enough to escape the reach of our shadow. The world was their battlefield, and no international law would be allowed to stand in their way. The mechanics of disappearance were central to the operation's psychological warfare. By kidnapping citizens and denying they were in custody, the state created a permanent state of limbo for the families and the public. This uncertainty was a tool of terror, designed to paralyze society with fear. If there is no body, there is no crime, and if there is no crime, there can be no justice. In Argentina, the death flights became a terrifying logistics solution to the problem of what to do with the disappeared. Prisoners were drugged, stripped, and loaded onto military cargo planes. Under the cover of night, they were pushed into the Atlantic Ocean or the Rio de la Plata. This wasn't just murder. It was a way to make the evidence of the crime literally vanish into the depths of the sea. The logistics of the death flights required a high degree of coordination between the Air Force, the Navy, and medical personnel who administered the sedatives. It was a factory-like process of elimination. This systematic approach to mass murder illustrates the cold structural mechanics of the operation. It was a bureaucratic solution to a political problem, executed with the precision of a military exercise. While the Southern Cone regimes provided the boots on the ground, the role of the United States remains a subject of intense historical debate. Declassified documents have since revealed that U.S. intelligence was not only aware of Operation Condor, but provided technical support and training. The School of the Americas served as a classroom where Latin American officers learned the very techniques used in the operation. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger famously told Argentine leaders that if they had to clean up their country, they should do it quickly. This green light from the world's leading superpower gave the military juntas the confidence to proceed. The U.S. provided the logistical framework, the communication equipment, and the counterinsurgency training that allowed these disparate military juntas to function as a single lethal organism.
The beginning of the end for the Condor network came from an unlikely place, a pile of discarded paper in a police station in Lambaré, Paraguay. In 1992, human rights lawyer Martín Almada discovered what became known as the Archives of Terror. 5 tons of documents, meticulously kept by the secret police, detailed the specific dates, names, and methods used by the Operation Condor network.
For the first time, the structural mechanics we've been discussing were laid bare in black and white. These files proved that the disappearances weren't the result of excesses by individual soldiers, but a deliberate, programmed policy of transnational genocide. The archives contained photos of victims, records of interrogations, and the telex messages sent through the Condortel system, providing the smoking gun for future trials.
The legacy of Operation Condor is etched into the scars of South American democracy. It is estimated that at least 60,000 people were killed by the network, with hundreds of thousands more imprisoned or tortured. But the impact goes beyond the body count. Condor destroyed a generation of intellectual and political leadership, stunting the democratic development of an entire continent for several decades.
It proved that in the name of security, the state can dismantle every legal and moral barrier it was ostensibly built to protect. The operation turned technology, meant to connect people, into a tool for the most primitive forms of cruelty. Today, the ghosts of Condor still haunt the courts of South America, as survivors and families continue to fight for the truth to be fully recognized.
Through the principle of universal jurisdiction, aging dictators and former intelligence officers have finally been brought to trial. These cases aren't just about seeking justice for individual victims. They are about documenting the history of the machine. By examining the logistics of how these regimes talked to each other and shared their victims, historians are ensuring that this architecture of repression can never again be built in secret.
When we look back at the Cold War, we often focus on the nuclear standoff. But the real war was often fought in the periphery, in places like the Southern Cone, where the weapons weren't ICBMs, but telex machines and unmarked Ford Falcons. Operation Condor represents the dark side of globalization, the globalization of state terror. It reminds us that when borders disappear for surveillance, the citizen is erased.
In our modern world, where digital surveillance is more pervasive than the Condor operators could have ever dreamed, the lessons of this era are vital. The ability of states to coordinate across borders to track enemies has only grown with the internet. We must ask, what happens when the technical infrastructure of the state is no longer bound by geography or the rights of the individual? The mechanics of Condor were crude by today's standards, but the underlying philosophy that the survival of the regime justifies any level of systematic terror is a virus that still exists. By remembering the victims and exposing the mechanics of their oppressors, we reclaim the history that the military juntas tried to erase. The borders have been restored, but the memory of when they vanished remains a warning for the future.
Let's dive deeper into the individual roles of the nations involved. Chile, under General Augusto Pinochet, was the primary architect. The DINA, Chile's secret police, acted as the central nervous system for Condor. They weren't just catching Chileans, they were providing the blueprint for how a modern intelligence agency should function in a state of permanent internal war.
Argentina, meanwhile, provided the muscle and the primary theater of operations. During the Dirty War, the Argentine military became experts in the logistics of mass detention. They operated over 300 secret detention centers across the country. Many of the most famous Condor transfers happened through these centers, where victims from other nations were brought to be interrogated and killed.
Uruguay, despite its small size, was a fervent participant. Its military was obsessed with the Tupamaro urban guerrilla movement. This obsession led them to cooperate extensively with Argentina to track down exiles in Buenos Aires. Many Uruguayan citizens disappeared in Argentina, a direct result of the seamless intelligence sharing that defined the Condor Pact.
Paraguay, under the long-lived dictatorship of Alfredo Stroessner, served as a vital communication hub. Its central location made it an ideal spot for coordinating radio traffic. Stroessner's regime was one of the most stable in the region, providing a reliable, long-term partner for the more volatile military governments in neighboring countries. Bolivia's participation was often tied to its role in the narcotics trade and its strategic position in the heart of the continent. The military regimes there used Condor as a way to legitimize their rule and gain access to advanced surveillance equipment from their more powerful neighbors. In exchange, they allowed Condor agents to hunt freely within Bolivian territory.
Brazil's role was more nuanced. While they participated in intelligence sharing and some joint operations, the Brazilian military often preferred to maintain a degree of independence. However, declassified documents show that they were deeply involved in the tracking of leftist movements across the borders of the Amazon, contributing significant data to the shared archives.
The role of the special teams deserves more scrutiny. These were not just soldiers, they were trained assassins, often recruited from the fringes of society or right-wing extremist groups. They were taught how to blend into foreign cities, how to use explosives, and how to conduct surveillance without being detected by local police. They were the Phase 3 ghosts. One of the most terrifying aspects was the coordinated kidnapping of children. When parents were disappeared, their young children were often stolen and given to military families to be raised. This was a deliberate attempt to literally breed out the left-wing ideology of the parents. It remains one of the most lasting and painful legacies of the Condor era. The grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo in Argentina have spent decades using DNA testing to find these stolen children. Their work has turned the very science of genetics into a weapon against the silence of the military. It is a powerful example of how truth can eventually dismantle even the most sophisticated systems of state-sponsored lies.
The financial mechanics of Condor were also highly organized. The operation required a secret budget, funded through diverted state funds, and, in some cases, the seizure of victims' assets. This black budget allowed the secret police to operate outside the oversight of even the military's own accounting departments, creating a state within a state.
To move this money, the regimes often used shell companies and offshore accounts. This financial infrastructure was just as important as the telex machines. It paid for the safe houses, the unmarked cars, and the international travel of the assassination squads. Condor was, in many ways, a pioneer in the dark arts of transnational money laundering for political ends.
The psychological impact on the survivors cannot be overstated. Those who made it out of the detention centers often lived the rest of their lives with the trauma of what they saw. The Condor survivors created a network of their own, sharing stories and evidence that would eventually lead to the prosecution of their tormentors decades later. We must also look at the role of the media during this time. In many Condor nations, the press was strictly controlled. Journalists who tried to investigate the disappearances were themselves targeted. This created an information vacuum where rumors and fear replaced facts. The regimes used this vacuum to spread their own propaganda, painting all dissidents as dangerous terrorists. However, some international journalists and human rights organizations like Amnesty International worked tirelessly to bring the truth to light. They began documenting the disappearances and smuggled information out of the Southern Cone. This international pressure was one of the few things that could occasionally force the military juntas to slow their pace.
The National Security Doctrine wasn't just a military strategy, it was an educational one. It was taught in military academies across the continent. This ensured that a whole generation of officers viewed their own citizens as the enemy. Breaking this mindset has been one of the biggest challenges for South American democracies in the post-Condor era. The transition back to democracy in the 1980s was not a clean break. Many military leaders negotiated amnesty laws that protected them from prosecution. These laws were a final attempt to keep the architecture of Condor hidden forever. It took decades of legal battles and the bravery of judges and victims to finally overturn these protections. One such legal milestone was the arrest of Augusto Pinochet in London in 1998. Although he was eventually released for health reasons, his arrest sent a shockwave through the world. It established that sovereign immunity does not protect a leader from being held accountable for crimes against humanity. The walls of the Condor were finally crumbling. The technical lessons of Condor are being re-examined in the age of Pegasus spyware and facial recognition. Today, a dissident doesn't need to cross a border to be tracked. Their phone is a Condor tel in their pocket. The methods have evolved from telex machines to algorithms, but the goal of transnational repression remains chillingly the same.
When a state views its own people as a threat to national security, the tools of technology will always be bent towards surveillance. Operation Condor is a case study in what happens when there are no checks and balances on that power. It shows how quickly a group of nations can descend into a collective madness of violence and paranoia.
The archives of terror in Paraguay continue to be studied by historians. Every year, new connections are found and new victims are identified. These documents are a living testament to the fact that while bodies can be hidden, the paperwork of a bureaucracy is much harder to destroy. The banality of the evil was recorded in triplicate.
The operation also had a profound effect on the culture of the region. Literature, music, and art from South America in the late 20th century are filled with themes of exile, silence, and the missing. This cultural memory serves as a secondary archive, keeping the history alive even when the official records were suppressed or destroyed.
We must ask, could something like Operation Condor happen again? While the specific Cold War context has changed, the rise of authoritarianism globally suggests that the temptation for states to coordinate repression is still high. Regional alliances can easily be turned from economic cooperation into mutual surveillance networks if democratic safeguards are weak.
The key to preventing another Condor lies in the transparency of intelligence agencies and the protection of international asylum laws. When we allow governments to operate in total secrecy for our own safety, we risk building the foundations for a new architecture of terror. Sovereignty must never be a shield for systematic human rights abuses.
Operation Condor was a dark experiment in what happens when the state becomes a predator. It turned the Southern Cone into a laboratory for repression. By deconstructing its mechanics, we aren't just looking at the past, we are looking at the blueprints of a machine that many would like to build again. We must remain vigilant and informed.
In the 21st century, the fight for justice continues. Trials in Argentina and Chile have resulted in hundreds of convictions for former officers involved in Condor. These trials are essential for the health of these democracies. They prove that the law is, in the end, more powerful than the secret police and their telex machines.
The survivors of Condor, many now in their 70s and 80s, are the most important witnesses to this history. Their testimonies in courtrooms across the world have provided the human face to the cold mechanics we have discussed. Their resilience is the ultimate failure of the Condor network. They were meant to be erased, but they are still here.
Let us remember the names of the victims and the families who never stopped searching. Let us remember that the disappeared are not just numbers in an archive,
but people who had dreams, families, and a belief in a better world. Their absence is a permanent hole in the fabric of South American society that can never be fully filled.
The deconstruction of Operation Condor is a work in progress. As more documents are declassified by the US and other nations, the full extent of the coordination becomes clearer. We are learning that the network was even more extensive and more deeply integrated into the global Cold War than we previously imagined.
It is a story of how easily the rule of law can be replaced by the rule of the gun. It is a story of how technology can be used to isolate and destroy rather than to connect and empower. But it is also a story of how the truth, no matter how deeply buried, eventually finds its way to the surface.
As we look at the maps of South America today, the borders are once again symbols of national identity and trade. But for those who remember the 1970s, those lines on the map will always have a double meaning. They are reminders of a time when the continent was a hunting ground and the law stopped at the edge of a secret prison.
This deep dive into the architecture of the Cold War reveals a fundamental truth about power. Power without accountability is a dangerous engine. Operation Condor was an engine with no brakes, fueled by ideology and maintained by a technical elite who believed they were above the very humanity they were tasked to protect.
We must continue to deconstruct these hidden histories. By bringing the clandestine intelligence networks into the light, we strip them of their power to haunt our present. Knowledge is the most effective counter-surveillance tool we have. The more we understand how repression works, the better we can defend our freedoms.
The Cold War may be over, but the structural mechanics of state terror are a blueprint that is always available to those who seek absolute control. Operation Condor is the ultimate warning sign. It is a testament to the lives lost and a call to action for everyone who believes in the sanctity of human rights and the necessity of democratic oversight.
Thank you for joining us in this deconstruction of Operation Condor. By looking into the darkest corners of our history, we find the strength to build a more transparent and just future. The borders of the mind, like the borders of the continent, must remain open to the truth, no matter how difficult that truth may be to face. Please subscribe to our channel, The History of Us All.